the early 1990s, I was a teenager. I'd had my Spectrum for a few years at this point, and I'd already moved on to playing on my consoles, specifically at the time my Master System, but I still kept up with the scene for my humble Speccy. And one of the last things I ever bought, in fact, the last game I ever bought for my Spectrum, was Turrican 2. Now, most people associate the Turrican games with the Commodore 64 and the Commodore Amiga, thanks to the amazing work of Manfred Trenz, who coded them. However, for me, Turrican 2 is something very special about that time and the ZX Spectrum. It was, realistically, one of the last big releases for the system. And like I said, for me, it was the last piece of software I ever walked into a shop and handed my money over to purchase. So in today's video, given that I'm releasing this video the day after my 40th birthday, I'm going to talk about Turrican 2 and how much I enjoyed it. So let's take a quick look at Turrican 2 for the ZX Spectrum. So here we have Turrican 2 for the Spectrum. As you can see, it's quite a colourful if simple title screen, and as would often be the case with Spectrum games, you know, it's not done by the original team. This was done by the Enigma Variations crew, and to be fair, they did a really darn good job. I mean, the Spectrum hardware is not designed for a fast-paced run-and-gun platform shooter, yet with the limitations of the system compared to the C64, Commodore Amiga, Enigma Variations have done a pretty good job. Now, yes, visually it is pretty garish. Can't lie about that. The Spectrum color palette was not the greatest, and its limitations in terms of the graphics layout for the screen with the 8x8 grid with just two colours giving you the attribute clash doesn't make for the most visually appealing games, even at the time. But, you know, the colour clash that you get on this, it's not the best, but it isn't too bad. You know, most of the time you can see where you are as the Turrican sprite changes colour to stand out against the relative background that you see. Now, yes, there are certain things that you will notice. Scrolling isn't the smoothest, but that was never the Spectrum's strong point. And the pace isn't the fastest. Again, not the Spectrum's strong point. You have to remember, there are no hardware sprites here. Everything that was put on screen on the Spectrum was done in software. And yeah, that has an impact. But you know, if you compare this to, say, a Spectrum game that was released a decade prior to this, the difference is night and day. By this point in the Spectrum's life, sort of 10 years after its inception, pretty much, programmers who were skilled could squeeze a ridiculous amount out of the system. And towards the end of the Spectrum's life, you were seeing titles like this, which possibly even 3 or 4 years earlier, many programmers would have said you wouldn't have been able to do. But here it was. Now, how does it play? Well, to be fair, even though it is a bit slower than some of the other versions, it plays really quite well, all things considered. Yes, the controls are a little bit clunky. They're not the most responsive. Again, this is due to the pace of the game, so a lot of the responsiveness would come simply from the frame rate, but it's more than playable. And as I said, it was one of the last big Spectrum games. Now, it did get some pretty good reviews in the magazines of the time. Certainly Your Sinclair, Sinclair User and Crash enjoyed it. Although, of course, when we look back now, we see contemporary reviews of the game will often criticise it for its ugly graphics and limited gameplay and not being the smoothest. But for me, it's all about context. This was a game that was produced for a machine that had no right in being able to do a game like this. You know, like I said, no hardware sprites, quite basic audio, horrendous attribute clash. Yet here you are. You have a game which was, at the time, absolutely huge. And it was one of the last times that the Spectrum really had a major multi-platform title released for it. And, you know, like I said, this was the last game that I ever purchased for the Spectrum. I remember walking into the now long gone Microbyte in the Manchester Arndale Centre, handing over, I believe it was $12.99, and walking out with a copy of Turrican 2 in its nice cardboard box with its instruction manual and audio cassette well in there. And that was the last time I ever did that. So yeah, there are those who will criticise this game. I still personally think it's one of the best games of its type on the platform. But I'm aware there is a heavy nostalgia tint to that because it was the last Spectrum game that I purchased in an actual shop. And that makes it special in a way that maybe some other games aren't. And that's fine. But yeah, this is Turrican 2. It's a fun game. It's quite well programmed. The only drawback I would say if you're playing an original tape or even +3 disc copy of this is the frankly hideous multi-load. Every level of the game has to be loaded in, and it can be tiresome. You know, the Spectrum was a limited machine. It had 128k of RAM because this was a 128k only game, and you had to make these games fit, which meant, you know, either massively cut back games or the dreaded multi-load, and this was a multi-load title. Now, these days, that would be, what? You have to wait how long between each level? Because these days people complain if they have to wait sort of 30, 40 seconds for a level to load in. If my memory serves me correctly, on the Speccy, you were waiting a good sort of 5 minutes between levels as the tape loaded the data into the system memory. And yeah, but that was the price you paid. But anyway, as you can also see from this footage, I'm not very good at it. I was better at it in my youth, but age and a dulling of the reflexes has made me somewhat less good at Turrican 2 over time. But yeah, this was Turrican 2. I adored this game back then. I still adore it now. If you have a Spectrum or you're going to use a Spectrum emulator, this is definitely worth checking out just to see how far coders were trying to push the machine at the end of its lifespan. Don't forget, machines like the Mega Drive and SNES were on the market at this point. This was a decade-old piece of hardware which was realistically underpowered when it was released, doing a game that really nobody thought would have been possible on it. So there we have Turrican 2 for the ZX Spectrum, the last Spectrum game that I purchased. Now, as I said, they're my opinions on it. I probably know I do have a rose-tinted view of the game, and I want to know what you think of it. Leave your comments down below. Now, if you did like this video, please do hit that like button. If you really liked it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you really, really liked it and you've subscribed, ring that bell. You'll get notified when I upload a new video. And also, don't forget, I have both Patreon and YouTube memberships available for people who really, 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 really like my videos and want to support this channel. You'll see all the details on the end screen. I do have to give a shout out to my current subscribers, Leftback and Old Scott Retro. You guys rock. And yeah, this is Rob. This has been 81632-bit, my birthday special, and I will see you on the next video. Bye bye for now.